How weird. Okay, there we go. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go back into the innovation playlist. We were there once before, you recall. There are 5 themes in the innovation playlist. There's mobilizing your community, student-driven learning, real-world challenges, authentic assessments, and caring and connected communities. And those 5 themes took years to kind of coalesce and to put everything under the whatschoolcouldbe.org umbrella. And the 5 themes kind of brought it all together. We've watched the Caring and Connected Communities main video. So each of the playlists has a main video, and then there's a series of resources that are available. And so Anne and Robert and I decided to go back to the very beginning. You don't have to treat it as the beginning, but we decided to go back. And because you're in a moment here where as you're, working with your communities, developing possibly strengths teams, working on an impact project, Barry, in your case, mobilizing your whole community, we thought that this would be a good moment to actually watch this. It's about 26 minutes long. It does feature some Hawaii folks, which is pretty cool. And so we'll just take a look at it, and then we'll do a debrief afterwards. And Robert will facilitate that part. So give me a second while I share my screen, share sound, and then here. Okay. Oop, hang on, asking for a password. Okay, you guys can see my screen, okay? So we're at whatschoolcouldbe.org. We've been here many times before. I'm going to scroll down here to the playlists, and you know that you can go left and right in these playlists here. So I'm actually going to click on this link right here, which takes us to a more vertical look at the innovation playlist. And then there's the main film here. And by the way, that cover photo right here was actually taken at a screening that I did at Key Project in Kahalu, where I grew up. So it's pretty cool that that was the photo that they selected for the film. So let me click on it here. And then I think you guys have suggested in the past that I go into full screen, right? So let me go into full screen. Everybody can see that okay? We're good? Okay. All right, let's roll.
I travel all over the country, visit lots of schools, meet with lots of people, and do my best to listen and learn from people about what's working in the field. And one of the things we've observed time and again is it's challenging to change an existing school. It's difficult to change a district. The bigger the entity, the harder it is to change, but people are doing it. And people are doing it not here and there, but they're doing it all over the country.
We have to just have a complete paradigm shift, an innovative approach to education. You just can't keep doing what you've been doing and expect a different result.
Let me get some kids at the table and ask them what they want. Let me bring some parents. Let me get some teachers. Let me get some division leaders all at the table so we can start having the conversation together versus I'm going to sit in isolation and make determinations and decisions about what happens next, because the kids are ready.
One of my life highlights has been traveling all across the country and learning so much from remarkable educators, kind of everywhere. And one thing stood out is I have yet to meet a single person who has said to me, hey, the way school was when I went, the way it largely is today, that status quo model is perfect going forward. We're set. No, I mean, in different but important ways, we are all education change agents. Yet when someone shares with me their efforts to change a school, and it's been a single person trying to take this on, that's been a direct path to frustration and failure. The key, and where I see real change happening in our schools, is when it's a team of people. Maybe it starts small with something we call your own committee of 10, might be, a dozen or so people with different perspectives that work behind the scenes to move a process forward, but where you reach a broader and broader set of people in your community and help them form a vision of what their school could be, help them weigh in on and define what important competencies you want your kids to develop, and then create the conditions that let teachers do what they entered the profession to do, which is to engage and inspire their kids and prepare them for their futures. And so when that happens, I've seen schools change in a matter of months. I've seen entire districts change top to bottom in a couple of years.
I started looking at some of the districts that are having a lot of success. It was all about the team. How do you bring people together to accomplish those goals? And crucial to that was not only the student voice, was the parent voice. Because if you try to do it yourself, you're not going to be successful. It's going to be top down. And I rather have it be bottom up and have everyone engaged in the process. And that almost ensures success. As long as you continue to listen and be available and be approachable and be open, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you have all these people with certain skills and abilities and talents, and you bring them in a room. It's amazing what comes out. It's not about you, it's about that groupthink, that power of the community, that power of student voice and parent voice and teacher voice. It's just amazing. You can't be stopped. You can't be stopped when you have that.
In many ways, this is the best of all times to transform our schools. And there's a saying, never let a crisis go to waste. And so can we get rid of all the negative things about this difficult period? No. There are a lot of difficult things going on. I get that, you get that, we all understand that. So we can't just snap our fingers and say that's all gone. But we can absolutely focus the education part of our community's mindset right now. The parents worried about is their kid learning, the student feeling bored and disconnected because they're at home on Zoom for 5 hours a day, the teachers feeling deluged with too much to do. We can say, okay, we could try to recreate a virtual version of normal school. Do we really want that? Did normal school ever work all that well? When we really were honest with ourselves, weren't we just looking for a reason to reimagine what our school could be? Well, we don't have to wish for that reason. It's right in front of us.
We can look at this as this horrible thing that happened to all of us in 2020, or we can say 2020 was a pivotal year where we finally changed education to what we've been talking about for the last 40 years, but we're never able to pull off because we had no choice. We were just so stuck in this system that we didn't know how to get out of it. Right now, we have an opportunity to get out of a system that has been broken for a very long time.
It can be transformational for a school community to come together around a thoughtful vehicle that promotes discussion about the future of the school, the future of the kids they care so much about. And there are a lot of ways to do that. We actually made the film Most Likely to Succeed with that express goal in mind. Convene communities in thoughtful discussion, invite people to share their own perspectives, and just draw people out in a discussion about what's important going forward for their kids. And honestly, we've done, some 10,000 school community screenings with that film, but there are a lot of great ways to do it. But in the process of getting your community energized about a new vision for your school and to be supportive about the steps you're making to achieve that vision, convening your community around something that sparks the right kind of discussion is a very important thing to do.
Way back in 2016, January of 2016, I screened Most Likely for the second time, and it was to an audience of community and members and educators. It was the entire spectrum of our community. It was 175 people, and we did an absolutely epic post-film roundtable, 25 different roundtables, 7 or 8 people around the table, and basically that activity was kicked off by asking them to take 3 or 4 minutes quietly to write down every important question that the film generated in their minds. And then the tables simply went after those questions and discussed them in as much depth as possible. And the result of that was that, as I heard afterwards, there were people who talked all the way home. An argument broke out in the women's bathroom about certain elements of what had happened in the film. Some of my former students sat out on the street in their car. They came together until 3 o'clock in the morning talking about it. All three are teachers now, by the way.
And I showed the film in my district too, when we were implementing some of our programs. And it really went a long way in having the parents have a different perspective and viewpoint around education. It's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it's sometimes, it's communication, it's cognition, it's creativity, it's all these other things, and it's community. And that made a difference when they saw that film and they saw it in action. Now it's more real to them. It's like a concept that is just not in their minds, but they can actually see it.
So let's show the film to parents. Let's do a watch party with parents and give them a chance to talk about this, generate questions, have the conversations. Conversations set people free. It liberates them from traditional conservative thinking about what school has been, and allows them to sort of step out and think about what school could be.
The Portrait of a Graduate, in a nutshell, can be described sort of like your North Star as a school system for aiming your community towards the things that really matter for your students to know and be able to do by the time they leave your system, so that they are productive citizens in a highly complex world, and that you've done everything that you can to prepare them for the success in their eventual life in the 21st century. The Portrait of a Graduate process is an excellent practice to embark on after you've had a chance to screen, most likely to succeed. In many communities around the country, pairing that process with this film is a particularly powerful way to leverage your roles as community members and guiding your students to success in the 21st century.
So we invited different agencies. We invited all the Native Hawaiian agencies. We invited politicians. We invited clergy. We invited some nonprofit organizations, anyone who worked within the community and could have an impact, and or a potential future partner in learning. And so we invited them, we watched the movie, and then we had discussions around, again, the profile of a high school graduate. And then this January, we had a follow-up session and did the same thing during the day with staff and then during at night with the community. And we presented, this is the draft of the profile of a high school graduate. We want to get some feedback. We talked about the work that we had done in the meantime. Then it was kind of a call to action. How are you going to help us? So, you're saying you want all of our kids to be problem solvers. How can you as a community member, or you as our council representative, how can you help our kids get there?
What was so important about that was that the community felt like they became part of figuring out what kind of kids Molokai High School was going to graduate. And it wasn't just about college or bust or whether your kid was going to go into the trades. This was about the kinds of skills and habits and dispositions that Molokai kids would have for their entire lives. And that the very future of Molokai, which would be a balance between the pressures of the 21st century and keeping Molokai, that those kids would be the standard bearers. They would be the stewards of that idea.
What I have seen be very powerful about this process is that it is a very uplifting way to engage with your community about something aspirational. A lot of the work these days, especially right now, is very stressful and anxiety producing. And the Portrait of a Graduate is uniformly something that people say is very energizing. It makes people feel hopeful. It gives them a lot of energy for the kinds of transformation work that we know needs to happen in schools and systems around our country. So because it's aspirational, and if you do it in a community engaged way, one of the biggest benefits and one of the biggest impacts it can have for you, in addition to aligning your system around, goals that you can map to, is that it helps you build the energy and the political will for the very difficult parts of the work, which come later.
I signed up 2 months ago. How do you walk in the shoes of a student? What are they perceiving? I work with teenagers, and as an adult, I always have to think, okay, I've gone through this many, many times. For the student, this may be the first time they're going through this experience.
Shadowing is different than a walkthrough, a look for, an observation, an instructional supervision experience. After a while, they kind of forget you're there.
I personally implemented off the playlist shadowing a student. It was very eye-opening for me as far as being really in that ground level and experiencing the student's day.
You know, Ian Juke said we need to prepare students for their future and not our past. And when you shadow a student, and I imagine what they saw is that you're time traveling. You're traveling back in time, present time, and future time.
And my first shadowing was such an eye-opening experience for me as a school leader that all the professional development and things that we've been doing were not really getting into the classroom.
And then we feel there's a really powerful role for not just one. We think the more people involved with the school community who shadow students for a day, principals certainly, but maybe an innovative and a more traditional teacher, maybe a parent, maybe a student or two shadow another student, but have these different people with very different perspectives go through the school day in the shoes of a student, looking at it from the point of view of where are kids getting positive reinforcement on skill sets and mindsets we think they really need to develop. What's going on that's sort of neutral to that? And maybe what's going on that could be actually diminishing what's important.
So you're seeing the life of your school, snapshots all over. You're just seeing it, you're hearing it, you're feeling it. And you're realizing the work that you have ahead of you. You're realizing that you have some teachers that are still in the 20th century and they don't know why, how, or what it means. And then you're seeing these other teachers that know you're there, they're not performing for you, but they're certainly looking out for you and making you feel welcome and part of their journey. And they're trying to show you that they care and that they're excited about project-based learning, they're excited about inquiry, they're excited about Socratic seminar. They're trying to show you on that one day that they're willing to take risks and they're preparing their students for their future and not the teacher's past. That's the amazing thing about shadowing, is that you really get to see your school and your teachers and your students as you really can't any other way.
When it comes to changing any system, and it's certainly true for schools, think of it as a flywheel. And at the beginning, it's just sitting there and it's hard to move it, which is why we encourage you to start with a group, a committee of 10, to get it going, to use great videos to build momentum, to bring your community together, to set a big goal, to build on your bright spots. All those things are so important. Once that flywheel is moving though, take care of it, nurture it, build on that progress and momentum. I've been fortunate, I've been to Pittsburgh twice in May in the last 5 years to see their Remake Learning Days celebration. Wow, it will blow you away. So pay attention to what they're doing, how they celebrate the great progress, deliver to their community a message about what their teachers can do if they're trusted to get their kids engaged in working on different types of learning and create bold initiatives. And when that community embraces it, when they feel like they're succeeding, when they feel like they're accomplishing something important, they just view themselves differently. They view themselves as leaders, fighting for the future of their kids and actually making a difference. So powerful.
Remake Days is kind of almost a way to build a case for the new type of learning that might be different than what us as adults have experienced. And like when you talk about that type of learning, it's hard to verbalize that. But when you see it, that tells a completely different story than what you're trying to tell somebody. So to bring people in to see it, I think really helps build that case for this is the type of learning that's going to help our students in the future.
Remake Learning Days is truly a celebration of what is happening in a region. You have events really highlighting the education that's happening in rural communities, suburban communities, urban communities. By now, I think we all know it's vitally important that we reimagine learning to better prepare our kids for their futures. There's so much power if teachers, schools, districts, community centers, museums, parks, libraries, and really any place are all innovating together in their unique way to offer more compelling, more consequential learning experiences for all children.
We do this for the students. We do this for our families. I think it's really important to showcase beyond the school day.
I had a parent volunteer in the room with me during the event, and she was kind of trying to ground me, look at this. Look at what's going on in here right now. And it was really nice to take a step back for a moment and say, wow, look at all these people. Look at these kids excited to show their parents what they're doing.
A school community that comes together, embraces these goals, understands where they're headed, and says we can all do our part, man, those schools, I guarantee you by the end of the school year, you can be light years ahead of where you were before. A district, I've seen districts change top to bottom in 2 years. Once people are clear and excited, because what do we know? We know that when people have a voice in setting an ambitious goal, they will go to the ends of the earth to achieve it or exceed it. And when people are told, here's what you have to do, and they don't believe in it, good luck. And there's a lot of that, you have to, good luck, around trying to do traditional school in a way that we didn't believe in before, in a way that we always kind of rationalize because of state mandated exams or college admissions requirements or built-in expectations and patterns of behavior, or kind of this mindset, if it's not broke, don't fix it. There are a whole bunch of reasons we didn't do it. Every single one of those, it's a whole new world for them. The foundation of all of those things has changed. And so this is an enormous opportunity, and it's an enormous opportunity for leaders to step forward and say, we're going to put forward a different vision, a vision of what our school could be, a vision of what we've always known we wanted the school to be. The type of learning experiences for kids that actually prepare them for life, not just for bubble tests in college admissions.
We literally just went into crisis mode because we recognized that with the best of intentions, we were robbing children of real learning experiences that not only they need today, but that will directly translate to what they need when they graduate from us. Then we established the what's going to look like, and who's on board. You know, where's the coalition? Who's going to help us lead this? Because it cannot be top down. People have to discover this on their own as they appreciate the why. So we're there. Then we start to determine the how, the what and the how, and that's where we've put together this framework and the look-fors, and voluntarily challenged teachers who are ready and willing to just experiment with it. We've wrapped our arms around them literally and figuratively and said, we're not worried about the test. Do what feels right, what brings you joy, what clearly will bring joy to your children differently than worksheets and teaching to a test. So we've built this sort of core group of our pioneers that are just modeling the work. And again, slow, strategic, hard as heck, but watching that grow, become contagious, watching a teacher across the hall say, I want to try what she's doing, or a parent coming to an exhibition night and saying, I want my kid in her class because they're building airplanes. You know what I mean? They're doing worksheets.
You know, it was interesting because, you know, I think when you start an initiative like that, you have a bunch of staff that want to lead, that jump right on board. And I think because they had such success and because our kids were having such success, by the end, I felt like I pulled in the beginning a few along. At the end, I think I was just fueling the fire.
The mantra is makahana ka'ike. The mantra is by doing one learns. In education, so many times educators and administrators feel like it has to be perfect before it engages with the world. If we're telling our students they need to feel safe to fail, we have to live that mantra as well. And iteration and that concept of minimum viable product, a small version of something larger that allows you to test if you're on the right track, right? There's 1,000 different names for it. Like, you have to do that in schools. And so for me, it's the capstone program. Hopefully that grows. Hopefully that influences an institution. Hopefully that influences a region, right? And all of us are trying to do that. Figure out what the small version is that's going to give you actionable feedback back, and just do it. Don't wait. Do not wait. Tomorrow, design something tiny and allow it to grow. Because when people see an empowered base of students, it's really hard to keep denying them the schema and the structure to be able to keep doing it.
The virus itself, in a weird kind of way, wants to limit us. It wants to shut us down. And this is precisely the moment where you push back against that and say, is this the moment to dip my toes into project-based learning? Absolutely. Is this the moment to shadow students? Absolutely. Is this when we should be looking at the profiles of our graduates, either middle school or high school? Absolutely. Let's take a real close look at who our kids are going to be and what skills and habits and dispositions they have when we come out of it. And I think the idea here is that you can actually build communities through these activities, and it's the building of the community that's going to get us through this thing. But this is an epic moment for us to really push this issue of how do we form into a community, how does a school or a complex or a district see itself as it takes a village, that we're all going to work on this together. And with parents at home fulfilling the role of learning coach more than ever before, what a great moment to enroll them.
I had a high school teacher who had been very resistant in my last work throughout the whole process. Was a very traditional teacher and a good teacher using traditional methods and surface level teaching to the test. It took him longer to get it. When he got it, he came back to me and he said, I owe you an apology. And I said, no, you don't. Everybody's journey is personal. But he said, no, I owe you an apology. If I had just understood that you were simply asking me to teach the way I taught before SOLs, the way I loved, where I found joy, where my kids found joy, where learning could be much more organic and real, meaningful, purposeful, that is what's sad. Because he was right. We're not making widgets, we're helping kids and preparing the next generation of citizens. So the only other thing I'd like to say about it is we cannot underestimate the value of this work for the people who are closest to the work. Yes, our kids are going to benefit, but through this work, we are going to ignite people who have suffered, literally suffered through a movement that has good intentions and holds us accountable, maybe to the wrong things, but does hold us accountable to the work at the expense of the joy and the enthusiasm that the best teachers have and then instill in their students.
Robert, do we want to take a 2-minute restroom break here?
I do
Okay.
think so, yeah.
Awesome. 2-minute restroom break. We'll see you back at 5:08 or so.
Right.
Okay, if you can hear me, we'll make our way back. Okay, so Denali and Barry, can you hear us back there? And there she is. And he's back. Okay, Robert, you're up.
So here we are 22 years into the 21st century and in 2022, and I am sure that many of you watching this film are nodding your head, and I've pulled that many more hairs out once again in another 30 minutes because I'm going, yes. So as we debrief the film, rather than talking about the rationale behind what is being said, you have two choices in kind of sharing your thoughts. One would be the traditional, what wowed you, wonders, and worries you about what you just saw. But more importantly, what is the nugget, that you have created, the little seed that you've planted that is going to help create this heat map that we're trying to produce across the world for that little boy that I see in the Justice background, because he deserves a better future than what our graduates have right now. It's got to get exponentially better. So what are we doing for him? And tell us your nugget that you're proud of, that if they had filmed you, you would have been an integral part of that film.
Yes, I'll jump in there, Robert. I just want to say that what I just heard is exactly the conversations that I've been having with my coach and mentor, Art Souza. And it's like exactly word for word. And I have to say that I personally think we missed the boat here, because we had an opportunity once, COVID sent us all virtual and everybody kind of trying to figure out plans, we had such a great opportunity to start fresh, but we did exactly that. We tried to figure out how to make traditional classrooms work virtually, but we didn't try to redesign some of our programs. We didn't try to take advantage of the fact that everything was wiped clean. We could have started fresh, and then everybody just got back into the same routines. But now you have that added layer of stress, I would just say, because you're also trying to still figure out this pandemic world. So I was really like, when I looked at when we rolled right back, I said, we just missed the boat here. And I talked to Art about that. I was like, you know what? I feel like we missed the boat. We had such an opportunity there, like never before, because we're always wrapped up. It's always some union issue. How are we going to get teachers to be able to collaborate and teach multiple subjects, work on projects, and do all of those things? And even though I feel like we've missed the boat, like I feel like I'm very, very fortunate that I work in such a small program that we didn't miss that boat, that we were able to and I got to tell you that I don't get the total support that what we're doing is the right way. We haven't figured it all out. We're still going through, but you know what? I feel like, just like they mentioned in the film, that at least in my program, we're trying to make those changes. We're trying to go full project based. There are things that when the kids come to us at second grade level, there are things that we have to step in and do traditional because they just can't read or they can't do basic math. But you know what? We still try to pull on their strengths and try to put together projects that will help them to basically thrive. So I feel like in a way, it kind of made me sad because I was like, that's exactly what I've been talking about. That's exactly what I say, that how sad it is that we had that opportunity and we just missed it. I really think now you're going to go into year 2, trying to make traditional classrooms work instead of, let's scratch it. You know what? People are used to doing virtual. Let's come up with different ways our complex can run some virtual academies or whatever. And then we can have our schools focus on some project-based, build those. And we know that if the kids have relationships with the teachers have relationship and they can do those project-based kind of learning in smaller learning communities. We know that if it does happen again, then at least they can all cover for each other. They're all working together on some project. But I just feel like we just kind of went right back. We try to figure out how to get back to traditional schooling instead of, hey, here's our opportunity. Sorry, I talked a lot, but I was really passionate about that. I was sharing with Art Souza just how, nobody here, I'm sure even at the top, nobody went, oh, let's just go back to the normal thing. But it's like, wow, we missed the boat here in Hawaii.
I just want to break the rules, Josh, and share 2 things with Amy and the rest of the group. In May of 2020, when I left Maui Preparatory Academy, very frustrated because I thought we had created something different. I put my head down and into the computer and I designed what I thought schools should be. I designed a newish, different kind of an approach to school. And when I put my presentation together to sell that idea, I had, Amy, 10 quotes from some of the greatest educational leaders in the world saying exactly what you just said. And that was the first part of my presentation, that this is the moment to break away because it's going to be really hard to do traditional school online, especially for first and second, third. And so I put my head down, came up with a new model, had all the quotes, and then sat back and watched people tell me why we couldn't do it. Even though I said, but look, all these great people said we should be doing it. Please, it's the time. We gotta carpe diem. And so not only do I share your frustration, but there are dents in my walls here at the house where I've knocked my head against it for now almost 2 years, watching us swivel and turn. So I too shall be quiet. And who can offer another? Thank you for jumping in there, Amy, because that's good to start with passion like that.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you guys. Like, I think a lot of the times, all right, so like, I think it would have gone the way we all wanted it to go if it wasn't because of a pandemic. So like, people were operating under the circumstances of like panic, fatigue, how are we going to get this? When we come home from the stores, we wash the fucking groceries. Like and then we were like, oh, teachers, flip up your modality of teaching. And also let's try something new. So like, it wasn't like there wasn't enough people who had that mindset in the forefront of their frontal lobe. They were all operating from the mindset of fear. And so when you're doing that, you can't even rationally think. So they just, what do? They revert back to like what they can do in carrot and parrot and figure out how to switch their classroom this way. And already that was almost asking too much from some of them, because we saw and had to deal with like teachers having mental breakdowns and all of these things. But I'm wondering is if the circumstances were flipped like now, and like we are almost back to normal, and we're giving them that space to do that invention and reestablishing what school should be, it would have been a different story. Because I felt that same frustration, but then I had to like stop getting so pissed off, because I was like, listen, like everybody's in a weird space, and this is not normal for anyone. And like parents are like, my son Levi, he was like, my husband's a contractor, he was on like construction sites doing his learning, because I was at a school but my kids were distance learning. And so like the educator was not even able to educate the children, but like he was on an iPad in a truck figuring out how to be a kindergartner. So like it was just not, but he learned probably more from my husband's job and like looking at blueprints and figuring out that than his 90 minutes on Zoom a day. And I taught him how to read, but he's fortunate that his mother is a educator, right? So it's just those things were so, it was such at a time, like we were like, who's going to bring him today? Like everybody was operating from such a fear center that I think it would be really audacious of us to think that we could have done that then, you know? So like, let's not hurt each other anymore about it. don't no more walls or holes or dents, Robert.
I'm gonna
Joanne.
I just want to hop in and say like that's, I think that's actually one of the things that like there's a small part of me that's still like cautiously optimistic that while the DOE and the Charter School Commission have essentially said like you're on your own, good luck, do whatever is best for your community and your kids, I'm like quietly hoping that like maybe that means that they're working on something magical over there, because it feels like for the last 18 months I would actually say even less so in Charterland. I guess I'm speaking like for the DOE, but it seems like you guys had a little bit more structure and guidance at first. The charter schools were like literally do whatever you want, like go virtual, stay closed, teach from tents, like no one told us what to do. And so I'm with Jess that like I don't know that like I can hold any grievances against myself, my team, or our teachers for like not feeling innovative and creative in that space when they were like trying to survive. But I am cautiously optimistic that like the people above us have used the last 18 months where they haven't been contact tracing and triaging in these crazy ways every single day to come back and say like, hey guys, we did all of these amazing things. I think like maybe a micro example is that like, you know, the 2021 legislature said that now we have to start providing computer science instruction to our students. It's like now a mandatory thing. And by the end of 2024, all DOE schools have to have computer science offerings for kindergarten through 12th grade. Like that is this much of what I think is possible, but I'm hoping that like maybe there will be people who haven't been directly in schools, directly interfacing with like sick children and sick families who can say like, look at all these amazing things we've uncovered. Because I agree that it was an amazing opportunity to learn. And I don't know that the people who were directly in it could receive those lessons. I will speak for myself that like, even just doing this project has been incredibly hard because of the contact tracing and still closing classrooms and things. But I'm really looking forward to like learning from people who haven't been directly in it, who have had an opportunity to step back and say like, look at all of these things that are possible.
Thank you. And Jess's example of her son being on the building site is just a great example of what some schools were doing in helping parents provide with that experiential learning outside of Zoom opportunities. And of course, that's what we could have done actually formally by giving parents a lot more guidelines on not sitting with them in front of their computer screen, but getting them out and showing them, here's what you do when you take them out. Here's ways to assess. Here's questions you can ask. Here's places you could go. That might have been a missed opportunity but it sounds like a lot of people have picked up on it anyway. Who'd like to offer something next?
I can go.
Thanks, Barry.
Particularly kind of going back, well, pretty much what everyone said, but particularly Amy, thinking about that opportunity or the potentially missed opportunity. I started thinking about that old picture that I'm sure all of you've probably seen where there are side-by-side pictures of one from like the 1800s where, you know, you have rows of kids and, you know, all the, you know, heads buried in their books, and then right side it's like 2020 rows of kids with their heads buried in their books. It's like nothing's changed in the past 100 years. And then you think about COVID and how we tried so hard, like you were saying, Amy, to replicate what we were already doing in the online environment, still trying to hold true to that row of kids doing the things that we normally see them do. And there was a piece in the video that said something to the effect of, you know, we need to be preparing our kids for their future as opposed to, you know, preparing them for our present or our past, so to speak. So when you started speaking, Amy, it just all fell into place. You know, when we're talking about project-based learning and trying to give those experiential opportunities for the kids, thinking outside the box. I always tell my staff, and I actually borrowed this from a past presenter, but you don't want to just think outside the box. You want to turn around and blow the box up. You know, you want to go back to that, you know? But yeah, going back to what you were saying, Robert, it's like, I almost feel that there are more people who are trying to hang on to the current way things are, or even the past, than there are those that want to, you know, move forward. So it's, how do you do that? How do you get beyond that? How do you, and I'm just asking rhetorically, but how do you change that mindset, that paradigm, shifting that paradigm, you know? But it just made me think about all of that, you know, it's more
just to answer your question, not actually directly, Barry, I am a huge John Kotter fan. And I highly recommend looking at his Leading Change book, where he talks about his 8 steps. And it just is so logical, because it definitely echoes what Ted was saying about, he called it the Committee of 10, and Kotter calls it the Guiding Coalition. And I love the term guiding coalition, because I love the word guiding, and I love the idea of a coalition. And he talks about creating small, early wins, step by step. And so if you haven't, you can go Google Kotter 8 steps. There's beautiful diagrams. Absolutely recommend you look at it. And that is not a rhetorical answer, but a question, but it's actually could be interesting, Barry, to have a look at those steps. Because it's not flipping a whole institution. It's little by little, step by step.
Definitely research that.
I think what I took away from the video was just that idea of when is it a good time to, you know, try and cross over to project-based learning and those types of things. He said, now is the good time, right? It's never going to be a good time, but now is the perfect time, right? And then I think what Josh was saying, his quote that I took away was, conversations will set the people free. I think, you know, if we all just try to commit that sometime this year, we'll do, you know, try and bring the community together. I mean, sure, you're probably going to get 5 guys come, but just begin that conversation of what do we want to see when they leave our school, when they leave Waianae High. You know, what are those things that we see? And, you know, I've gone through that process before. And one of the scariest things sometimes that comes out of those conversations is, you mean you guys aren't doing that right now? And it's like, oh man, that sucks you in the face, you know, when parents say, that's not going on, you know, that's not what you're preparing us for. I mean, and so that's, you know, that's always fun to have those conversations, because it really wakes you up to, you know, we got to change now.
Thanks, Ken.
Robert,
Really?
I just wanted to jump in real quick and say, Ken, you're absolutely right? Because sometimes it's like, we know those things should be happening already and it's still not happening. But I just wanted to make clear that I'm also talking about, and as an administrator, I know all of you know this too, about those barriers that prevent us from making those changes. So I'm talking, at first they were like, no kids can take home the computers. They can't be on their own Wi-Fi's, blah, 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 security and all this. And boom, go ahead, anybody, whatever Wi-Fi you have at home, use it. All of a sudden it became okay. Or all of a sudden, like for us, just union contract things and system things. I'm not just talking about because I think more we offer that opportunity to teachers, I think they're ready. We've got a lot of professionals out there that's reading the same things we're reading, hearing the same message we're hearing. But I think it's the structural things that we had a chance like to negotiate with union contract. It was before, we can't have multiple bell schedules. We have the CAF has to serve, so much food by a certain time, but hey, we did it really creativity wise in terms of the pandemic. We were feeding everybody, and all of a sudden we could do all those things. So I'm like also talking about the structural things that we could have had a chance, because this is when nobody's complaining. We could have changed it all up. We could have 5 bell schedules, Anyways, I just had to throw that out there. Sorry.
Amy, I would love to add to that. Back in, I'm losing track of years at this point. It's starting to get fuzzy, and I can't remember even what year did the pandemic begin. It was March or of what year? 2019? 2020, right? Yeah. So in like February and early March, Amy, of 2020, when it became clear that something really awful was happening and that we were headed towards what could potentially be a lockdown, my motley crew galvanized ourselves and said, this is the perfect moment to hold a conference. Let's do it virtually. And let's talk about what school could be. And within, very long story short, but within short order, we had put together this virtual conference. We got the structure together, and then we put an Eventbrite together. And so there's a couple of points I wanted to make, Amy, about this. One was that when we launched the Eventbrite, I will remember this like it was yesterday. All of us were kind of sitting at our different computers because at that point we'd gone into lockdown. And within 15 minutes, we'd sold 275 tickets. They were gone, and they were 80% public school educators. And the name of the conference was Aha Kuka, to gather and talk seriously. And we called it Kani Kapu, to blow the conch, to gather together. And you saw in the film Kuka Hakalau, right? She was a keynote speaker along with Ted in that conference. And we went for 2 days, all day, both days, huge amount of energy to say, this is our moment to do exactly what you were talking about. Let's really seize the moment and go forward. And the structural issues and the media coverage gets in the way of that. But I also want to say that I've got considerable evidence that there were many of those 275 educators, plus a lot of others, who just kept right on going despite the structural problems and did everything that they possibly could to, as Barry, as you described, that was actually Kainoa Pali, who's the vice principal, who's now the principal at Molokai Middle School, who said, we don't want to think outside the box. We want to get rid of the box. I love that. And that there were many educators, Amy, who really just took the moment. But we don't know that because it was never covered that way. We don't know those stories. They're not covered. They're not in the general population. The general population doesn't know that at all. And that's where my frustration is. And that's why I keep moving forward with this, with podcast episode after podcast episode, now at 80, because each one of those stories, many of them in the pandemic, tell the story of what people did as they pivoted. So I hear you loud and clear about the structural part too.
So we have a couple more minutes.
Denali, any thoughts on your brain at this moment coming from your independent school perspective?
I'm kind of just, I hear what everybody's saying. I'm just a little bit torn and confused, I suppose. Because my whole stance when the pandemic started was everyone said, we can't do distance learning. We can't, everyone said that before, right? And then guess what? We did, right? And that was everybody from like some college ages all the way down to preschool. We had our preschoolers on Zoom. That was a disaster, but it, I mean, we did it. What else, what choice do we have? Yeah. So, and we actually did that during Omicron when we had a case on campus with our preschoolers. So not ideal, but it happened. So I get it. Like, it can happen, you know, if it has to happen, it has to happen, and we can make it happen. But then the other part of me is going, oh God, these teachers are at their end. They're at the end of their rope. They're drowning. I mean, we're drowning. We're all drowning, not just them, all of us. And so, you know, how can we possibly ask them to be like, just go throw your curriculum in the fire and start again, you know? And so it's timing, and it's, for me, it's kind of courage, because I'm a little scared to ask them to do anything right now. But yeah, so I mean, it's just, I mean, do we wait until things are a little bit more normal, and then when people can breathe, the air is clear, and then we ask them to, you know, try something new, or do we do it now when it's just a shit show already? You know, I mean, I don't know. So that's just, for me, what's going in my brain is like the timing. How do you figure out the timing? And you have to read people, and it's all about psychology at this point. I mean, so it's just very tricky.
Yeah, hard to read the room or the world, right, Denali, when everybody's on a different timetable and everybody's feeling something different. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Denali. It's like hard. Like, do we just do it now because everything's kind of not okay anyway? Like, no one's really, everyone's hanging on. We're losing people out of the profession. You know, they're not. Or do we, I don't know, wait for it to settle? But I don't think it will ever settle.
Right.
Right.
So I think Robert, as we wrap up this part, I think one of the takeaways from not only the playlist but the Mobilizing Your Community presentation and the other resources, video resources that are there in that particular playlist, is that there are stories of mobilization that have happened across the country and even the world. And one of the things that you see in the video that's emphasized is what happened in Pittsburgh with Remake Learning. And that is ongoing. It definitely took a pandemic hit for sure, but they're back now and remaking learning again in Pennsylvania and in the greater Pittsburgh area. And there are countless stories from around the country. So I guess we've tried to present that as a way to put fuel in people's tanks. So as you continue to remake learning in your way with your teams on your campuses, that there's gas in the tank as you go forward, inspiration, all of those metaphors. Yeah.
And the good news is it's not going to be here forever and ever, and we can circle back and start getting back on track eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. One example of that, by the way, is that next Tuesday, I and Susanna Johnson, who you met earlier in the course, who's the director of the community for What School Could Be, Susanna and I are actually, I can't even believe I'm doing this, driving to Eva Mackay Middle School to actually be part of an in-person conference. It'll be the first time for me that I'm doing that. And we're presenting the What School Could Be platform at the Hawaii Association of Middle Level Educators conference. And this is the first time that they will have been in person for 2 years. And so pretty exciting moment at Eva Mackay to have people coming back in the door again, and hopefully lots of energy around that, and that people can do all sorts of reimagining what teaching and learning can be like. So Robert, shall we move on to the last main part here? Oh, back one to your strengths. There we go. Okay.
So just to give you an update on how we're doing with this new project, I am scheduled, Ken, and why don't you jump in? I'm scheduled to actually come out to Ken's school talk about in-person learning. Ken has agreed for me to come out and do an in-person session with his teachers team. And you want to tell us did get one report today, Ken, from one of your teachers.
Wait, so they all took the survey. Are you not seeing that?
I've received one email.
Huh? Because I know they've completed them all because they were joking around and teasing each other about their strengths already.
So just remind them that they're supposed to send me their top 5.
Oh, okay, got it.
And one person has.
Yeah. So in February 28th, Robert's coming out. We have like articulation days, and so the teachers will be on a full release, and we can concentrate directly on the strengths. It's a good team of teachers, real positive. I was sharing with the VPs that they just had a great articulation day, I guess yesterday, and their ability to that internalized of causing learning is really coming through right now. And when we were sitting around, there's a lot of downtime when we do our lesson studies, and they're looking at each other's strengths and comparing. Because I was telling them, you guys get mad at each other once in a while, and it could be just because what's important to one person is not that important for another person, and so how do we keep on trying to get one guy to turn in certain pieces of paper that he's never able to turn in, and it's like that's really not that important to him. It's not one of his strengths, and so they're really looking forward to Robert coming in and talking about the strengths.
Awesome. We've of course had to put a hold with Serena because of her health, but I'm due to work with a team from her school. Jillian and I are having a conversation, I think this week, Jillian, and Barry is looking at potentially working with his team there. So keeping me busy, and thank you for supporting this optional opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. And you're also going to be substitute teaching. You forgot to tell them.
Oh yeah, Robert, we need to hear from you about this.
He also signed up to be a sub, you guys, because he's so nice and knows that we're always short. So he is putting himself into the TC system. So I think we should all start requesting him.
So I actually went for my last step today. I went to the district office here in Kaneohe and got fingerprinted. So hopefully I did not have a criminal record. You'll be happy to know that I've been classified as a class 3 substitute, which made me feel very happy. I get paid the big bucks. But thank you for that, Jess. I'm doing it for actually 2 reasons. One is I'm a Rotarian, and our motto in the Rotary Club is service above self. And this is a great way to serve. When I hear that they're hiring 7-Eleven cashiers to come into classrooms, I don't know if that's a joke or not, but I thought maybe this old guy should see what it's all about. And then, to be honest with you, what an incredible opportunity for action research. I'm a big advocate of shadowing students. What about shadowing a school? So by coming in and subbing, I'm going to learn an incredible amount. And as my wife said, are you going to go back a second time? Because if I go down to King Middle School, because I watch them go home every day, I don't know if I'll make it past one day. But
you will. You'll love elementary. You will. You'll love it. The kids need great subs. So I'm like super stoked about that. Sorry, my son is right here. But another thing I wanted to say is, do you guys have matching shirts on?
You're late to the game, Jess. That's Jillian, and Jillian spotted it right off the bat. Who else spotted it right out? Jan did. Yes, very early on. Yes.
I'm a shirt. I support this company called Vistaprint, and they keep asking me to become a business member because I order so many t-shirts from them.
Jess, I was just going to mention that back in '93, that's how I entered the teaching profession when I finished my undergrad at University of Iowa and moved back here to Hawaii, was entering the substitute pool. And I worked in the Windward district mostly, but started also doing some subbing work in the independent schools as well. And it was a fantastic opportunity to, because of the attitude about the subs, and especially with the kids, was, oh, we've got a sub, so today's kind of a free day, and coming into it and trying to build a quick relationship with them and realize what you could actually do that day was huge experience for me, and really helped solidify that I wanted to be a teacher and to continue down that path of trying to get a permanent position. So I'm glad, Robert, that you're doing this. This is very, very cool.
Oh man, cool, Barry. Barry just let me know that he is not only a Rotarian, but he's president-elect for his Kaneohe Rotary Club.
Ah,
that
wait,
is
I thought
so
you're
cool.
the Rotary Club in Kaneohe, Robert.
No,
different.
I'm Honolulu Sunrise.
Oh, okay.
We
Wow.
meet at 7:15 a.m. on Mondays.
Wow, Barry, dude, that's
Barry, you're a Rotarian.
you're
Now we're
Rotarian.
definitely going out for that drink.
That actually came about before I got the position. Since I've had the position, I'm like, oh, time-wise, it's a lot.
That's great.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
That's so
Robert,
cool,
we can come down to the finish here, and we will actually finish at 5:45 when we wanted to. This is
Yep.
amazing.
Which means we won't do our exit ticket again, which is great because we'll do it one day.
Well, no, we might have time. We can do the other things in a few seconds.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. Back up. Here we go. Tip. Okay, so just as normal, next steps for March 1st when we meet again. Again, even Jess, per your comment today, and Jan and all of that, anytime you want to blog, you go for it. So continue reading and commenting on colleagues' blogs, continued scheduled meetings. Amy, really appreciate what you shared today about your time with Art. I absolutely love Art Souza. I think he's just a major Jedi Yoda man. And I'm really glad that you have that time with him. Robert, I think your screen went away.
Oh, no.
There we go. You don't have to go full screen. You can just go to this slide. Yeah. And so just same as before, connecting with us, connecting with Joel, keeping the Celebration Summit, considering Stephanie Malia's offer to be a feedback provider for her new book. Yes, I think that discounted copies thing is already gone already. That has gone away. So maybe we do have time. If we give everybody just 15 seconds, go, Robert, to the last slide.
Okay, just as a little exit ticket tonight, what's the #1 item on your bucket list?
Any bucket list.